Alright, this is 5.1 Part B, and we're continuing to talk about the tragedy of the commons and about the different land management uses. So in the last video we ended on talking about the national parks being one of them and how the indigenous people were forced off of them in many parts of the country. And the next part is managed resource protected areas. So that's for sustained use, keyword use, of biological, mineral, and recreational resources. National forests in the US. So the Sandia Mountains would be part of this. And this is usually managed by the Bureau of Land Management, BLM, which Representative Deb Haaland will be managing if she's sworn in. And there are also marine areas that are managed in this way, in a conservation manner. Then there are habitat and species management areas. So regular active interventions to help maintain biological communities, fire prevention, predator control. And this is a marine iguana in the Galapagos Island. So protected areas that are aiming to protect particular species or habitats, and management reflects this priority. Many Category 4 protected areas will need regular active interventions to address the requirements of particular species or to maintain habitats, but this is not a requirement of the category. And then there are strict nature reserves and wilderness areas to protect species and ecosystems. And usually this is to protect biodiversity from human visitation and impacts, and they're strictly controlled, so you'd have to get a permit to go into these places. So these are indispensable areas for scientific research because they're not touched or affected by tourism. Okay? And this is the Changtang Nature Reserve in Tibet. It's the third largest in the world. And the largest is Northeast Greenlands National Park. It has 900,000 square kilometers. Most of them are covered by permanent ice. And it's inhabited by Inuit people. All right. And here are protected seascapes and landscapes. So these are protected areas for recreation. So these usually have a distinct character with ecological, biological, or cultural and scenic value. And then finally, there are national monuments, unique sites of special natural or cultural interest. 20,000 around the world. And we don't like that one because that's a sacred indigenous mountain in South Dakota. So, and the tribes are pushing to have that one removed, even though it's very famous, Mount Rushmore. The Taj Mahal. So there's 20,000. So these are more physical man-made sites that are preserved. All right, and here we have, just for fun, the largest monuments in the world. This is the Statue of Unity in Gujarat. It's the biggest one. So you could see the Statue of Liberty would barely make its waist. And there's two in China and Japan, Buddhist ones. Just kind of fun for you to see that. That's the one in India. That's the largest in the world. All right, now we've been talking about international designation, so now we're going to get a little more specific with U.S. land use. So this graphic is showing the percentages of different types of land use, but it does not indicate the specific locations of the land use. So golf is not only found in South Carolina, and all of Michigan is not idle or fallow. Instead, it's basically showing a pie chart with the shape of the US as the background. So how much of the land is used for these various things? So you can see cow and pasture range is a huge amount of the land use in the US. There's federal wilderness, and here even livestock feed. Look how much of our land goes to cow and pasture and livestock feed. It's crazy. And then the food we eat is only this much of the country. That's how much land goes into that. And that much of it is corn syrup. And a lot of it's barley for beer. Idle, just not being farmed, state parks, national parks, and federal wilderness. A lot of these are in the West. In the East, they don't have a lot of that. Timberland, private family timberland, corporate timberland. So this is a lot of land for timberland. I didn't realize. Defense, wetlands, desert, feed exports. And then this is interesting. The 100 largest landowning families would have as much land as all of Florida. That's crazy. Golf. So take a second, look at this. It's kind of a pretty cool graphic to think about how our land is being used. I would like to see a lot more of this land for indigenous cultural use. And maybe you all will spearhead that effort. All right, and then there are public lands. So the federal government, country's largest landowner, is the country's largest landowner. So the federal government owns a lot of land. 25% of the country is owned by the federal government. And they use this for rangelands, national forests, national parks, national wildlife refuges, and wilderness areas. So I'd take a note of this, jot this down. And then here's each state and how much of that state is federal land. You can see New Mexico, 42% is federal, 69% in Alaska. So this gives you a sense too, like these are native lands. And so this really shows you how the federal government had stolen this land. Nature, there's the ethics to this, where basically all of our livelihoods are based on these ecosystems, right? So having these land is very important for our economies to preserve these ecosystems. So a big movement, if you are interested in conservation, might be to think about how can we put a dollar sign to show what is the financial benefit of these lands, right? And competing interest in the land leads to multiple use lands. So that's land that's used for recreation, grazing, timber, harvesting, and mineral extraction. So there's a lot of land that's designated in this, and it can mean that it can be used for a lot of different things. Oh, 1 second. All right, last thing. So 95% of the federal lands are managed by the following 4 federal agencies: the National Park Service, U.S. Fish and Wildlife, Forest Service, and the National System of Public Lands, U.S. Department of the Interior, Bureau of Land Management, or BLM. So I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with these entities on the reservations in our communities. And so a reading that I would like you to read once you get through these slides is When Public Lands Become Tribal Again, a story of fire, stolen lands, and how hard it is to get into the U.S. to follow its own laws. That would be recommended. Okay, so answer a few check questions, and that'll be all for 5.1. Hope you're having a great day. Just pause the video.